sailed through storms, conquered lands frozen in ice, and built an empire that history almost forgot. Chapter 1. Frozen beginnings. Long before the world knew their name, the Vikings were born amidst the relentless cold of Scandinavia. Towering fjords, dense forests, and icy seas were not just their home, they were their crucible. Life in these frozen lands was brutal. Winters could last for half the year, crops often failed, and survival demanded cunning, strength, and unyielding courage. Yet, it was in this harsh environment that the seeds of a legendary people were sown. Scattered across the rugged landscape were small tribal communities, each ruled by local chieftains. These early Vikings were farmers, hunters, and fishermen, eking out a meager living from the land and the sea. But beneath their everyday toil lay a restless spirit, a drive for exploration and conquest that the world had never seen. Their lives were governed by a strict code of honor, fierce loyalty to kin, and the promise of glory beyond the horizon. The icy seas that surrounded their homeland, treacherous and unforgiving, became both a barrier and a pathway. From a young age, Viking children learned to navigate narrow fjords, read the stars, and withstand the merciless cold. By the time they reached adulthood, they were not only hardened warriors, but also skilled sailors, their minds sharpened by the constant battle against nature itself. It was in these frozen beginnings that the foundation of an empire was laid, not through sheer wealth or numbers, but through resilience, adaptability, and a unique understanding of the world around them. Their mythology, steeped in gods of war and frost, reflected their reality. Life was short, death was inevitable, and only the brave could carve their mark on the world. By the end of this era, the Vikings were no longer mere survivors of the North. They had become a people poised for expansion, with the ice itself shaping their culture, ambitions, and destiny. From these stark, frozen lands, a storm was gathering, one that would soon sweep across distant coasts, leaving an indelible mark on history. The story of the Empire of Ice had begun. Chapter 2. Raiders of the North. As the icy lands of Scandinavia hardened their people, the Vikings looked beyond the horizon. The frozen fjords and forests could no longer contain their ambition. Driven by hunger, curiosity, and the thirst for glory, they took to the seas, crafting longships that were marvels of design, swift, sleek, and capable of navigating both stormy oceans and shallow rivers. These ships became the vessels of an empire yet to be built. Their raids began as small-scale attacks on coastal settlements. Villages along the North Sea and the British Isles were the first to feel the terror of Viking steel. But what set them apart was not just brutality, it was strategy. The Vikings scouted, planned, and struck with precision. They understood fear as a weapon, and their sudden, lightning-fast attacks often left entire communities defenseless. From the thunder of oars against water to the clash of axes on wooden palisades, their presence was inescapable. Beyond raiding, the Vikings were relentless traders and explorers. They sailed down rivers into the heart of Europe, exchanging furs, amber, and slaves for silver and exotic goods. Settlements like Dublin, York, and Kiev became hubs of commerce, connecting distant lands in a network that was both feared and admired. Yet even in trade, the Viking spirit remained uncompromising. Diplomacy often carried the subtle threat of violence just beyond the horizon. Warriors were not merely soldiers. They were symbols of a culture built on honor and reputation. stories of valor, cunning, and ruthless efficiency spread across Europe, giving rise to myths that would outlast centuries. Their raids were as much about identity as wealth, proving themselves worthy of the gods, feared by enemies, and revered by kin. By the end of this era, the Vikings had transcended their origins. No longer just survivors of the frozen north, they were raiders, traders, and explorers shaping the destiny of nations. The empire of ice was spreading, not through conquest alone, but through the indelible mark of fear, ambition, and unmatched skill. The world would soon feel the full force of the Northmen, and their legend would echo across oceans, rivers, and the pages of history. Chapter 3. The Empire that Ice Built. The Vikings were no longer just raiders striking fear into distant coasts. They were builders of a northern empire, shaped by ice, steel, and unyielding ambition. Beyond their longships and raids, they established settlements that would endure the harshest winters and the test of time. From the wind-swept shores of Iceland to the rivers of Eastern Europe, the Vikings planted the roots of civilization in lands once thought uninhabitable. These settlements were more than mere encampments. They were carefully organized communities with defined roles, laws, and a social hierarchy that balanced the power of chieftains with the council of elders. Trade, craft, and agriculture flourished where survival once dominated. Timber and stone became the foundation of villages, while networks of rivers and fjords turned natural obstacles into trade routes connecting north and south, east and west. The Viking Empire was also a cultural force. Their myths, poetry, and sagas carried the values of courage, honor, and exploration. Temples and sacred groves dotted the landscape, reminding each generation of the gods who shaped their destiny. Even as Christianity began to spread across Europe, many Viking communities preserved their ancestral traditions, blending them with new influences to create a hybrid culture uniquely their own. Power in the Empire of Ice was not absolute, but negotiated. Chieftains wielded authority through both respect and fear, while alliances were forged through marriage, trade, and strategic warfare. This political acumen allowed the Vikings to maintain control over vast territories, from the icy northern archipelagos to the fertile lands along the rivers of Russia. By this stage, the Vikings were no longer mere marauders. They were rulers, traders, and settlers, leaving an enduring mark on Europe's social and economic landscape. Towns like Hedeby, Dublin, and Novgorod became symbols of their ingenuity and adaptability. Their influence extended beyond the battlefield, reaching into governance, commerce, and even art. The Empire of Ice was a paradox, forged in harshness, yet capable of great sophistication, feared for its warriors, yet admired for its resilience. The Vikings had transformed from wandering raiders into architects of a northern empire whose legacy would ripple across centuries, leaving traces in languages, place names, and legends long after the last longship had returned to the fjords. Chapter 4. Legacy in the Frozen Shadows. The sun finally began to set on the Empire of Ice. The once mighty Vikings, whose longships had struck terror across Europe, faced forces they could not always overcome. Christian kingdoms in England, France, and Germany consolidated power, while internal conflicts between chieftains weakened unity. The age of raiding was giving way to settlement, diplomacy, and assimilation. The icy fjords, which had once forged fierce warriors, now echoed with the quiet of change. Yet the Vikings' influence did not vanish with their decline. Their settlements became thriving towns and cities, forming the backbone of trade networks that would endure for centuries. Dublin, York, and Novgorod, once outposts of raiders, grew into centers of commerce, law, and culture, bridging north and south, east and west. The rivers and fjords that carried their longships now carried merchants, scholars, and ideas, spreading the imprint of Viking ingenuity far beyond their frozen homelands. Culturally, their legacy was profound. The sagas, runes, and oral traditions preserved stories of heroism, exploration, and survival. Even as Christianity spread through Scandinavia, the old myths endured, weaving themselves into folklore and literature. The image of the Viking, the axe-wielding warrior, the master of the seas, the fearless explorer, would resonate for centuries, inspiring generations across Europe and eventually the world. Politically, the Empire of Ice left lessons in strategy and governance. The Vikings' system of chieftains, assemblies, and negotiated power influenced emerging medieval states. Their skill in both war and trade demonstrated a balance of aggression and diplomacy that was rare in medieval Europe. In many ways, the foundations they laid shaped the political landscapes of Scandinavia and Eastern Europe for centuries to come. Today, the shadows of their empire linger in languages, place names, and DNA. Archaeological sites, burial mounds, and long-forgotten forts whisper the stories of a people who once ruled the frozen north with unmatched skill and ambition. The Empire of Ice may have melted into history, but its echoes remain. Frozen in time, haunting the fjords and forests, a testament to a civilization born of frost, fire, and indomitable spirit. Unlock the secrets of lost empires. Subscribe to Midnight Empire now.